climate literacy projects going on in the district, as well as the College 101 courses that are being developed, and the new climate center at West LA College. So that was very encouraging to get that special shout out from the chancellor this morning. We have our team here today. So I am, along with Beth Abels, we are the coordinators of the SEI. And Zhao Bellenhorf from Valley College Library is also on our team, and she'll be sharing with resources today with us when we get to that section of the discussion. I want to introduce the two people that we have. We're lucky to actually bring in. I don't know if other breakout sessions did this, but the first person I want to introduce is Lucy Garcia. I get to know Lucy Garcia working with her now over 2 years at the LAUSD Climate Curriculum Committee. This is not an integral part of LAUSD, but is made up of a lot of people that are current and retired from the LAUSD, working very hard to get the Board of Education to institute a wide range of climate-related curricula on the campuses. And I'll let Lucy talk about that. So that's the K through 12 effort. Lucy is the co-chair then of the Climate Curriculum Committee and the Climate Reality Project here in LA. And you can see her link at climatemateriality.org at Climate Curricula. I'll put that in the chat. Go ahead, Lucy, and introduce yourself, or I hope I didn't put too much in there.
Okay, well, one thing just to clarify, I'm not a co-chair of the entire chapter, just of the committee. And the chapter has been extremely supportive of us. So yeah, I taught science. I graduated from UCLA in 1998, even despite my age, and 3 children. And I graduated in biology and ecology, and then I went on to teach, and I always taught climate. I taught at Van Nuys High School, Title I school, for 18 years. And I was always very frustrated by that moment after you teach the solutions that the kid says, but miss, why aren't we doing those things? And the real reasons, of course, are very clear. The reasons are in the humanities, right? It's our history, it's our culture. And those are the things that push and limit policy. So, and it's our economics, right? So I'm supposed to give a little bit about why to teach climate, and then also how our committee got started. So why to teach climate comes straight from my heart. You know, like you cannot teach children half-truths. It's immoral and demoralizing. And you guys know that already. And it's so much better when anybody who is experiencing a trauma, experiencing even just an anxiety, can talk about it with each other. And then, you know, we're the people who are lending a hand in that moment. You know, we're opening vistas for action that weren't there before. So it's so important, given how fast the earth is changing, right? And how fast our systems are changing, because they're bound to the earth in ways that we, you know, haven't really planned well for. And so, you know, if anybody's tried to buy eggs recently, you know this is true, right? Why is it that, you know, birds, like our chicks and so on, why is it that our birds and our trees and our bees and so on are all sick? The answers are complex, but it often comes back to climate change, even the pandemic, and I can cite stuff on that. So in the midst of these deep and imposed changes and stark and inspiring new stories, we have a sacred duty to teach that. And we also have a duty not just to teach what's happening and, you know, facts and so on, stories and so on, but we have to teach and revise and teach teach our students how to revise our fundamental beliefs. Like, obviously, our fundamental beliefs that have to do with the earth have to change. Our position on earth is not to be the dominator of it. Our position is to be a keystone species, helping all the other species do better. By the way, that comes straight from Lila June, and I put a couple of references to her. She's I think she's a doctoral student. She might have her doctorate already. A native person, and she studied how the previous societies always, were creating more and more space for different species to live. So this is in the whole, they weren't farmers, they were landscape managers. And that's what, that's the kind of, by the way, that's the kind of thing that comes out of scholarship. It doesn't come from repeating what everybody else is saying, the solutions that everybody else is saying. That's why your job is so important, because you're leading the way into scholarship. So all kinds of very important things come out of a deep a deep look at the real world. So what kinds of beliefs am I talking about? I'm talking about not just what, have we hurt Earth, and to what extent does that matter? That's obviously a question we have to answer. Do we believe the Earth can heal itself? Ask yourselves these questions. To what extent can people help? Or are we just duty bound to destroy things? Do we believe that mistreating humans and mistreating the Earth, lead to each other? And what do you think about that? To what extent does this matter? Where do the people go who have been hurt? And then do you believe that you have any effect at all on changing this thing? Okay. We need your help. We need help building lessons for students that have more and more, that have more and more scholarship involved in them. So we need your help also. This week, the thing you can do is to support the UTLA and SEIU strike, because there's no way that our students are going to come to you prepared to talk about climate unless teachers get, full staffing at the schools, right? It's as simple as that. And then all the things in Beyond Recovery are the kinds of things that impinge on the students, and the students' problems. That is our working conditions. So we need you to support that. Just a very quick, I don't know, do I have any more time? No? Done? 1 minute. Okay, so I called together a group of people. I went to the Climate Reality Project because they had passed the greening of the school plant resolution. And I talked to people up north who had passed a climate literacy resolution, and called these people together and said, this is what's happening. And they took it and we ran with it, and we got climate education is required, PK through 12, all subjects in the Los Angeles Unified School District. All right, thank you.
Well, thank you, Lucy. I wanted to remind people that we were very lucky to have Lucy last year on our Earth Day event, and she was a very popular speaker. We've also had a series of seminars since for the last 2 years that you can visit on our website that address climate and its impacts with many details about that. But Lucy has been one of our main, I want to say motivators, because her motivation and her understanding of what needs to be done educationally is very encouraging and inspiring, I think. I did attend the meeting, the big rally, and one of the things that was spoken was the Green New Deal for schools, and that included climate literacy. So there is a very big overlap with our efforts in climate literacy and education and what the teachers need in the classroom, particularly LAUSD. With that, I want to move to introduce our next speaker, Denise Robb, teaches political science at Pierce College. We've also been lucky to have Denise in one of our previous seminars, one we did on understanding the politics of climate change, and she was very helpful in that. She's very, very committed to climate politics, and she's also a member of the steering committee of the SEI. So Denise, go ahead and introduce yourself and let us know what your concepts are on climate literacy and the challenges both at K through 12, but also in our particular context, the LACCD and community colleges.
Thanks. Hi, nice to see you all. Yeah, it's so important. I've embedded it into my class, and I was just going to spend 5 minutes just sharing with you my assignments that I've embedded, because one of the things we talked about was that you don't necessarily have to teach a science class to have climate education in your class. And I'm so inspired, Lucy, to hear that K through 12 is going to have this. This is great, because a lot of my students know almost nothing about anything really. I mean, every time I come to class, I'm like, can you believe what just happened? It'll be some big news story. And I'll look around and I'll say, well, how many of you knew that so-and-so was just killed, or the bank collapsed? And 2 people will raise their hand. It's always the front row students who always have something to say. So, so I show films on climate change as part of the curriculum. One of them is the Leonardo DiCaprio film, After the Flood, and the human element. And the library was able to get those films for me. They're very good about whatever films I need. They get them very quickly, so that if the student isn't there, they can watch it at home. And my online students watch it at home. And then I have an essay assignment that I give. I'm gonna just share. Let's see if I can get this here. Oh, I was just looking at your curriculum resources. So here's the assignment. Can everybody see that? Is my screen visible?
Yes,
Yes, we can see it.
Okay. So this is the assignment. It's 5 to 7 pages, and I divide the group into 4 parties: the Democratic, Republican, Libertarian, and Green parties, because those are important parties in California. They're the 2 main plus the 2 minor parties. There's a few others, but I won't get into the details of why they're not there. And I change up the assignment every semester, but the most recent one was the Inflation Reduction Act. And I don't have them just write about it. I have them write about it from the point of view of the group that Canvas has randomly assigned them. So I give them a little background on what the parties think about it. Obviously, the Libertarian and Republican parties are not so excited about it, and my students are often really angry that I've put them in those parties. But I told them that you can't really understand the world if you only see things from your vantage point. I want them to understand that there are people who literally deny the science, and of course, in their essays, they're not going to be able to find a lot of literature to back up their position. So I tell them that you just have to talk about why they believe this. A lot of them, it's an economic argument. They just don't think it's worth it. And then I go into how to write it. And then I have a section on fake versus real news, because a lot of people don't know when they're when they're hearing a news story or reading something or watching it online, they don't know if it's real or fake. And the library's put together a number of amazing resources on that. And they include a lot of literature for us already, so the students know where to go. And then in the group project, they have to do a commercial selling us on their particular party that they've been assigned. And one of the issues they're going to be talking about is climate change. So it's part of their group project. It's all of them have to write an essay about it. And then they have an oral presentation where I ask them questions about it. And they're not allowed to memorize. They have to actually know something. I said, even if it's only a small amount, you need to know something, not just be able to read it off of a card the night before that you block and copied it. And that is how I embed it. And I also give a lot of extra credit when there are political events, not just climate change. I give extra credit for attending events online or in person, rallies. I give extra credit for the teachers rally that just happened, and any kind of activity. Of course, I can't force them to just go to Democratic Party events, even though I just got elected to the Democratic Party as a delegate. So I'm very excited about that, but I don't force them to only do Democratic things. I allow them to go to any political events as long as they're participating. That's the key. Yeah. Are there any questions about this?
Go ahead and raise your hands if you want to be called on. I think, and you can also put questions in the chat. I think Xiao Ballenhorf is watching the chat for that possibility there. Where we are in terms of these introductions is now we do get to move into the next part of this whole discussion. Thank you both, Lucy and Denise, for opening this up. Beth is referring to this part of it as a group round robin. Discuss climate emotions, climate anxiety you might be feeling, establish motivation for and action to embed climate literacy. So I think we can.
There's a hand up. There's a hand
go
up.
ahead.
Tisa, do you have your hand up?
Yes, I was wondering how much was the percentage of the course that is your activity is spent on. Like your activity, is this a course by itself, or is it part of another course where you have a climate activity?
It's part of American government. So
okay.
Every week they learn about Congress, they learn about the Supreme Court, they learn about the president, but then I have them actually take what they've learned about parties and about how the government runs and put it into practice in terms of their presentation at the end of the semester and also their essay.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
There's another question. Denise is asking if your course has any prerequisite.
No prerequisite, but they do have to take their paper to the tutoring center, either NetTutor online. We have an embedded class tutor, and we also have the Center for Academic Success. So they can take it to any of those places, either online or in person, or email it to our own tutor. And they help them with the writing. So they do, it's a scaffolded assignment. They write it in chunk. They start with a summary, then a draft, and then a final paper. And they are supposed to use what the recommendations the tutor has to make their paper better. So by the time I get it, it should be amazing. I told them they should all have 8 papers.
Thank you, Denise,
Mm-hmm.
very much. And I just wanted to check to make sure there were questions for Lucy, since we just opened up for questions for a moment here. Yeah, Ryan, I see you have your hand up.
I just wanted to mention I put some things in the chat. I recently gave a workshop on evaluating internet resources, which included fake news, which was good. That was a fun workshop. We're at the West LA. We have all this funding for this climate center. So we just had a meeting yesterday, with the president, and we're going to have ADG academic development grants to develop course curricula for our climate studies degree, and we're gonna make all the courses OER, and I happen to be our ZTC grant coordinator, faculty grant coordinator. So that may be something for us to work on in the near future. So I just want to bring that up.
Great. Thank you. It's very exciting, and I'm glad to hear that they're providing finance stipend support for faculty to do this. And SEI is looking for ways to also provide stipends for faculty. Eventually we will be able to integrate curriculum. Thanks, Ryan.
Sure.
I had a question for Lucy, because I know that Lucy's worked a whole lot on the K through 12 efforts. And one of the things we've talked about in our biweekly meetings with that group is the need for students to basically ratchet up the knowledge base or the curriculum content so that as K through 12 improves in climate literacy, then we can't make the assumption that students entering the LACCD community colleges are starting from scratch or from zero. They actually might have something already under their belt. And I'm curious about the best way to segue for 11th and 12th graders as they enter the campuses of the LACCD. What would be a good way to set up a continuous curriculum transition rather than start them again at kindergarten when they become first year students?
I would say that that you were talking, I think I saw it on the agenda about communities of practice among yourselves. If you have communities of practice among yourselves, then what you do is that you lay the basis for the high school teachers who are even more under, I think they're even more under pressure. I don't know. But I feel like high school teachers are under more pressure. So 11th and 12th grade teachers can then see what you're doing, take some of what you're doing and, and talk with you. Hopefully we can have some conversations between those who are planning at your level, at the college level with the 11th and 12th grade teachers. One of the things that's going on now is this class that we're trying, that Beth was working on, right, to get get a climate part into the 11th grade class, that required 11th grade class called College 101. Get something about climate in there. That would be a great step forward too, so that everybody who has to have that class to graduate is going to come with at least College 101. So those are two ways.
Thanks, Lucy. And we actually are in discussion with College 101 curriculum folks, including the current teachers, to embed some climate literacy into those classes. And SEI just thanks to Zhao, just finished our first module to help, a draft module for them to start looking at, to see how to add that to the Climate 101 curriculum. So I want to shift us over, if that
Ryan has his hand raised. Maybe Ryan has a question.
I just wanted to mention, if you haven't seen it, there's an excellent webinar. I put it in the chat. It's by Dr. Lawrence Larry McKenna about his upcoming OER book, Conversations with Earth. There's a passcode there. It's just great. Right now we have 51 applications for our climate center at West, and so we hope to have a director soon. But anyway, I'm part of this institute OER this year, and this is one of the things I came across. It was just awesome. So I encourage everybody to take a look at that.
Thank you. I see the link
Sure.
is in the chat, and this is all going to be recorded and also will be up on the SEI website if you want to grab it, as well as probably the DAS will have it located somewhere. So.
Right.
I want to shift us a little bit, and just the first thing I want to kind of do is just to check in and see what sort of feelings, what sort of emotions folks are having in general around what we're experiencing here in California, for instance, right now, being in the atmospheric river, or having extreme almost 2 weeks straight of rain, or our San Bernardino mountains having people be snowed in, sort of experiencing our own particular moment of climate impact. And so out loud, please, if you raise your hand and maybe there's something you have on your mind, or you're welcome to put it into the chat, just how you are physically or emotionally feeling right now about what's happening.
Voila.
Yeah, kind of like my studio. Yeah, go ahead, Lucy.
It's very, very important that you do this, and do this with your students as well. Do it with yourself and with your students, because it's like any other giant thing that you're facing. It's you're going to be some days good, some days, it's 3 a.m. and you can't, and it's just sickening, right? So the thing to do, like what I used to do is put different emotions, like put them on a placard and put them around the room and have the students go and stand by them, and then have them talk among each other and have one speak it out. So and you learn things from this, like one, I had despair and fear and anger and all of those things up there, and I always ask, are there any other emotions? And kids say, yeah, this is the 2000s, yeah, whatever's, put that up there. So I did that, and then another kid said, put excitement up there, and I was like, okay, put it up there. And when we asked her why, she said, because we get to make everything over. We get to do everything over and do it better. And I was like, dang. So I think it's really important to bring this out, especially in science. So.
Well, I want to give a little shout out to Zhao Bellenhorf, who I think is in our meeting. She created at the Valley College Library website a page on climate anxiety. It's actually still featured on the homepage of SEI LACCD.net. That's this thing over here. And so we did actually host a seminar on the sort of psychological effects of the climate crisis, something that was new to the SEI, but fortunately we had some really outstanding people guide us through that discussion. Anyone want to address the issues that Beth has just brought up, how we deal with emotions and feelings about the climate crisis?
So I see a couple in here. Travis, I saw you wrote in here, absolutely crazy.
Yeah, I can't remember a time the weather has been like this, and I know weather is not climate, but those long-term trends are what determines climate, but just it's so flip-flops, right? We go from like these totally extreme environments back and forth, right? I know it's going to be 115 degrees here in just a couple more months, and then it's been freezing cold and raining, and just it's kind of silly, but like I grew up here in LA as a kid, and I remember being terrified of the rain all the time because as a little kid, you watch the news later that night and it's all about the traffic accidents that happen over and over and over again, just everywhere in the city. And like, I'd always be just terrified of having to think about going out and doing anything when it's raining here in Los Angeles, because it's like, you're going to risk dying because of these traffic accidents that are happening all over the place, and just how much of a toll it takes on our city. Right, just the roads and the potholes everywhere as well. It really, like, we're just not equipped for this sort of thing.
So anyone else wanna? I see Ryan put in here that it's been way too cold and rainy. So you're feeling cold. and Adrian, I saw you had your hand up.
Yeah, I think for me, I mean, I'm super excited. I can't tell you, I'm running out of buckets. So I keep collecting water and I keep transferring it to another section of my yard. So this is amazing. But what concerns me is that because of this unprecedented, atmospheric river and the amount of precipitation that we're receiving, especially here in California, that people think that the drought is over. And that concerns me, that this is not our answer to, this long standing drought that California has experienced, right? That, as Travis said, come summer, August, September, we're still going to be having these triple digit weathers and everything's going to turn back into brown again. So I think we need to educate people about still saving water and, conserving, because we tend to go back to our old ways of being wasteful.
Thank you, Adrian. Claudia, I see you have your hand up.
Yeah, absolutely. In fact, quite a few already touched about that preparedness. And when you see things like levees breaking, and that's not the first time. I remember years ago when the Oroville dam spillway overflowed, things like that. And this is an ongoing issue, which really brings you back to politics in a way then, doesn't it? We never invest in infrastructure when it would make sense to do so. We always wait until after the catastrophe when it costs us so much more money. And then the other thing, talking about water that Adrian was just talking about, absolutely. People always forget about groundwater. Yeah, your reservoirs look great right now, but you do realize when the snowpack, great if it's nice and thick, but if it rains on top of it, you're going to have runoff yet again. And we're so far down on our groundwater supply. We would need probably a decade of rainfall like this year for that sucker to replenish. So either way you take it, yeah, we are so far nowhere near a solution here. To me, that is somewhat discouraging. And a lot of you folks say too that you have people in the front row, right, who listen to the news. But for me too, you bring these things up and then you're like, oh, okay. But hardly anybody really pays much attention, which brings us to that anxiety a little bit. It's maybe too overwhelming for most people. You feel too small. Like, what can you possibly do? So I also always try to kind of show the little things that we can do. One individual can make a difference. It's kind of like a snowball or a domino effect, if you will. So yeah, it's quite something. So yeah, that's what I wanted to add.
Thank you, Claudia. Appreciate your thinking and everybody here. And I think I just wanted to check to see if there was anybody else expressing what's going on for them right now. So doom and gloom, right? So climate change, it's a lot of doom and gloom, right? A lot of anxiety, a lot of fear, a lot of frustration. It sounds like when I hear what I hear in those discussions, and a feeling about wanting to make sure people know, right? Almost like a desperate plea for education. And so the reason, like, I think we could probably talk about this for a really long time. And if we went through it, I would be willing to bet that everybody here is having some climate anxiety of a sort. And the one thing that we know about climate anxiety, as with many, is that action is how we combat it. That is, action is one of the most important things we can do for our climate anxiety. And so I want to make the argument, and I think SEI wants to make the argument, that the way we as faculty especially, sometimes we feel like we're not, I'm not out there on the street, I'm not in the middle of the environmental movement. I'm teaching a class, and maybe I'm teaching architecture, which I think has a lot to do with the environment, but my everyday curriculum isn't about about sustainability. There's many other things that it's integrated into, but it's not the established core curriculum, although now I believe it is. But so I can feel really distant from feeling like I have action, like I'm taking action in the ways that I really feel like need to. And I feel a lot of desperation. That is where I spend time. And Lucy's got her hand.
Yeah, I have two things I got to say before the conversation ends. It's really important. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Okay, yeah. So I just what I wanted to make the argument about is that one of the most important things faculty can do is to and one of the most incredible actions that you can provide is to embed climate literacy into your curriculum, because then you're not only finding a path to helping your own sense of doom and gloom, but also helping those students find a path out of it, and then creating a future of possibilities and problem solving that doesn't exist at this moment. And if we don't, to Lucy's point and to Denise's point, if we don't, then this anxiety has, it has good reason to be there, but it's going to stay, and it's not going to stop. And we won't have those opportunities for as long as we would like to. So that's our argument for why adding climate anxiety into your curriculum, that's one, is so important. But even if it's just for you, right? Even if it's just so that you are taking action to impact the climate and impact climate change and chaos and biodiversity and water and air and soil health, right? Even if you're doing a little bit in your class where you're just helping your students understand it, then I think you're having a huge impact and you're taking action. So Sorry, go ahead, Lucy.
I have three things. First of all, everything you're saying, I'm going to add to it. First of all, when you teach anything about climate, you are reducing emissions. It's the cheapest and one of the most effective ways to reduce emissions. This is science. The science of that is proven. Second thing is, what Beth is saying is what you're not acting alone when you do this. Never act alone, even if you're just taking individual action. Don't act alone. Ask somebody to partner with you and do the same thing. And, if it's just, I'm going to turn off all my lights now, ask your friend to do the same thing as you do. And then the third thing is, what Beth is saying is you are using your system, the systems that you are embedded in, to take action. And that's what has to happen. So kudos to that. That's wonderful work if you can do it.
Thank you. Thanks for that, wrapping that up really beautifully, Lucy. So I think on that note, I think we want to move to our resource guide. And George and Zhao are going to take us through parts of it. And then at the end, we'll talk a little bit about community of practice, which is what Lucy mentions when she said earlier, but also when we're talking about not having to do this alone. So let me share my screen here. Actually, George, would it be easier for you? Would you like to share your screen?
Okay, I'll try that.
Okay.
Let me see if I can go to, is this, we've been compiling this list of links, which are available to you through this and a workshop today, and I think, or the breakout session. And it's at this point, this is a Microsoft Word version of it. These are all the links. And you can see that one of the ones that I got recommended to by Lucy Garcia is subject to climate. So all of these contain in different levels and different approaches, content material that you can bring into lecture material, into lecture presentations and visuals. I think one of the things I depend on a whole lot is to have, good graphics that show you processes that go on in geography, in earth sciences, on the planet. Sometimes words are not really enough to explain what is happening with the changes in the jet stream or the intertropical convergence zone, or all the things that are changing and accounting for the crazy weather that we see. So there's some of these are journalistic sources. And point out that our own SEI LACCD has, as part of its reason for being, that is our website, to provide learning materials. So we have a link to articles and a link to as a page of links, and most of the links are actually climate related. The articles are general consumption, mainstream press, they're curated. We try to keep them somewhat up to date, but the links reflect a whole lot of what you're seeing on this page. Where can you get more materials? Where can you get animations, short video clips? What are 6 podcasts that I can recommend to my students that deal with climate anxiety? And then our very own efforts by Zhao Bellenhorf, the LAVC Library Resource Guide that has climate action, climate anxiety, and the environmental justice issues of environmental racism and climate. So this is a very rich list. It's not exhaustive. Clearly, it'll grow as more and more curriculum providers, as more content providers make their materials available on the internet. So that is recommended. And I think, Beth, we did share this. Is there a link?
Yeah, I just put it in the chat again, and the one that's in the chat has a little bit more updated, and it has a bunch more articles, and also has descriptions of what most of what the other ones are.
Okay.
So,
well, I should quickly then turn to, this is the one that's online. Okay, so you can see that it's grown quite a bit since the version I downloaded. You'll see some familiar ones there. Actually, there's links now for the SEI pages. This is, thank you, Beth, for putting this there in the chat. So,
yeah, of course. And it's available to all of you. And I think, please, if you have suggestions, by all means, we'll put, if you have things you want to put in the chat, we will add those to the work as well. And then I don't know, Zhao, can you take us through the library guides?
Oh, sure. I guess I'll share one, just that I opened that one. You can now see, okay?
Yeah.
Okay, so this is one of the guides. I know the librarians on this web Zoom. I'll be very familiar with the library resource guide. So it's a way for us to connect different formats of material all in one place. So we have in here, we have books, articles, curriculum resources. You know, I think someone just mentioned about, you know, being the feel hopeless or doom and gloom. So we have resources for self-care and emotional resilience. In addition, we have, you know, if you want to show a video, like a podcast or video, we have that as well. And the next thing is, you know, when you feel depressed, how can we make ourselves feel better? I guess take action is one of the things we can do. We also have a link on getting help for mental health from mental health professionals. And I think is climate anxiety or climate depression is a real thing. And we're also here. We had a nice webinar before to talk about, you know, we have different people, we have students, we have healthcare professionals to get together to help ourselves and our students. How can we deal with climate anxiety? So this is just one of the guides, and I've also have the link to you in for the other two guides as well. And again, this guide is going to grow as well. So as we are getting more resources together, we're going to put it in, you know, adding it to it, updating it. So again, if you have any specific resources you'd like to be linked to this, we would love to do it. And in addition to the resources, Beth had mentioned, I developed a short module, Canvas module for our College 101 folks to preview and ask for their input. So our hope is to have all the College 101 instructors to adopt a module on climate change, climate action, climate literacy into their College 101 curriculum. I know the chancellor had mentioned it, so I hope that will grow. So at least a lot of our students or the high school students will get the get to at least have part of their curriculum be climate related. So this is in addition to our faculty like Denise, and I know most of the earth science, if not all of the earth science faculty already are doing it. But I think the idea is to develop a multi-discipline approach to climate education, climate literacy. And I love what Denise is doing with her class. She connected, you know, advocacy with her political science curriculum. So I feel that really is something that all faculty could find a link. So we at SEI understand how faculty are overworked, undercompensated, overwhelmed with all the things they have to do. So our goal is to have more, to work on things to make it easier for faculty from all disciplines to just integrate something. It could be as simple as one film, one podcast, one, you know, discussion, so then can get our students, you know, interested, informed, and to encourage them to take action to make their lives and their communities' lives better. Because I think that really is the goal of our educators. Like, we want to impart knowledge and they can take it and run with it. So that is really the mission of SEI, is to bring the awareness of climate you know, to all our communities. And we are actively seeking funding opportunities to make this happen, to make more curriculum resources available, to make adoption easier for faculty, also to train faculty who are interested in, you know, learning more and doing more in their classrooms or, you know, in their own lives. And I think this is a good segue into the community practice. So Beth, take it away.
Yeah, thank you. Do you mind if I close your
Let me
share?
stop. Yes.
All right, and let's get us back. I would get us all back to gallery view here. So yeah, thank you, Zhao. That was actually a really good segue. Perfect segue. You know, really our goal with SEI is that all the things that Zhao mentioned and that George mentioned. And our hope is that the work that we do helps our students to become advocates for their communities, especially around sustainability. And but we need that support in order to make that happen. And so one of the things that we're in the middle of developing, and we've been working with 3CSN to do this, is to create a community of practice, or if needed, more than one community of practice, where faculty can come with ideas or without ideas to come hear what other people are doing and how they're integrating their curriculum with climate literacy, and get a chance to kind of experiment and say, hey, I tried it here and this worked, or this didn't work, or next time if I tried it this way, I might have some more success. But just to create a community that provides support and kind of sounding board for this practice, because it is, you know, to everybody's point, adding more to our curriculum is not an easy process, and it takes time and work. And so the more that we can support you, the more we can rely on something like a community of practice. We think that will make it more, give you some ease in developing those practices and getting used to it and having other people to bounce ideas off of. So please keep an eye out for that. If you are interested in the community of practice and getting involved with that, then by all means, let us know. You can put a message in the chat or email SEI. Can one of you put SEI's email address in there, or our email addresses? And let us know, and we will keep you in the loop about when we start that up. And it's likely to be once a month to begin with, and maybe centered around a particular practice or a particular article or a particular lesson plan. So keep us in the loop if you're interested. And then what I'm hoping we can do is start a database for our district of practices that people have implemented in their classroom. So I guess we should open for questions or comments.
May Lucy and Denise want to make any closing comments? We have, I think we have about another 7 minutes.
We also have a question.
Tissa.
From Tissa, yeah.
Yeah, is there any plans to convince the state and education department to encourage all courses to include at least a small component of climate in their class curriculum? Long question in short. Can we make a statewide directive to include climate in physics, chemistry, geology, oceanography? Practically every class there is a climate component, like for example, physics. You can talk about cloud formation and air pressure and all that. So if you can, if it is possible for the state to to encourage, not force them to include the bit of climate in every course.
I think I can speak to that a little bit, which is that what we've noticed over the last 2 years, particularly after the governor's budget, that when we looked at the breakdown of the educational proposals made by Gavin Newsom, it had the 3 categories: community college, Cal States, and UCs, and then it had it by category. And for climate, it had 0 for community colleges and quite a bit for Cal States and UCs. We do, from a community college point of view, often feel we get, in a sense, the short end of the stick when it comes to, funding specific curriculum goals or including community colleges in some of these larger budgets. So it is, in fact, a bit of a battle, and we're always encouraging the chancellor and our legislative person in Sacramento to press Sacramento to include community colleges. What within that climate funding then leaves it up to the Cal States and the UCs on implementation of the curriculum. But you're right in terms of our need to step out of the STEM silo. That is part of why we're having this breakout session, is we're very keen on the idea that you cannot limit climate education to the, in a sense, the natural or physical sciences or the STEM sciences, that we really need to cross over into social sciences and humanities, as Lucy pointed out when we started out today. So that is, in fact, a major goal, and that's why we're hoping that the resources we're making available will allow people to do that. But as far as directives, I think we are probably shy of that this time.
I'm going to
Go
interrupt
ahead.
you on that, because one of the things that we're in the process of doing, and we just approved yesterday in SEI, is creating a resolution to start at our grassroots level of the district, having that become part of our curriculum, and then we're going to ask, for those of you who are involved with our union, we are going to ask the union to put climate literacy on the table as something to start allowing us to use the lobbyist to negotiate with the state for legislature. So SEI is actually kind of trying to spearhead at a grassroots level. We're starting small, right? But the idea is, if we can get our union and our local organizations to start supporting this, then we can move it up towards the state legislature.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Lucy.
There are efforts at the state level to get climate education funded, and climate, the schools for climate infrastructure, all of that, to get it funded at a state level at I think they're looking for 150 billion this time around. So that's being approached at the state legislature level.
Thank you, Lucy. Thanks, George. Any other questions for anybody?
Yeah, voilà.
I wanted to say something. We're talking about climate action, but I remember this kid, he's a native kid, who's 15, skinny. He was standing, I just explained how we were going to do our research and present it to the parents in a community climate conference and all of this, right? So that they would have anyway. So what he said was, and his hands were in his pockets, and he was saying, I think every action requires reflection first. So if you're doing deliberation and reflection in your work as an educator, that is also fundamentally needed. He says, I think we're leaning a little too much towards the action side. And I think it's true.
Thank you, Lucy. That's a very good point. Very welcome comment.
Yes, thank you, Lucy.
Thoughtful action, reflection before doing. Yes. Well,
And
Beth, what do you think? We have about 2 minutes left. If anyone would like to add a comment, maybe even a quick question. Otherwise, I think we're winding up this breakout session. We do repeat it actually in the next hour. So there are 2 versions of this breakout session. I hope that we've had a good turnout for this one. Thank you very much, everyone who's attended today and commented, asked questions, but particularly thanks to our 2 guests, Lucy Garcia and Denise Robb, who've really are leading the way in climate ed and infusing climate curriculum into their courses. So thank you, our guests today, and let's hope that our next breakout session is as good as this one.
And this recording of this, and also all the messages and such will be on the recording, and we will also include any of the links and resources that you guys have provided, and we'll put them up in our guide that we've already shared with you.
Lisa Moreno has her hand up. Lisa.
Oh, I just want to add to what Lucy said. Yeah, I was just listening to this one podcast where it was this African man. I know he spoke Swahili, and he was asking like the Westerners, why in Western thought there's a problem and we just go bam and we solve it. And he goes, what we do is we elevate ourselves above the problem first, and then reflect on it, consider it, study it. And then we solve like the problem as a larger whole, instead of just solve the problem, because you're gonna keep hit with the same problem. So like what this person said who spoke Swahili, it was like the same, and they had a word for it too, but it was the same as like the kid you were talking about. It's just a different cultural approach to problems.
Yeah. Thank you, Lisa. Well, with that, I think we're out of time. And we will then resume with a different flock maybe in a little bit. Thank you all for attending.
Bye, thank you.
Thank you all.
Imagine our real focus is actually on climate literacy. And that's why our two guests today, Lucy Garcia and Denise Robb, who I hope will be logging in very soon, are educators, and they are very focused on not just teaching, infusing climate into the curriculum, but also to remove the STEM silo. That is to get climate education out into the social sciences and the humanities and the arts. And to that extent, then we will succeed in educating the upcoming generation on climate, given that it is, in fact, quite a challenge. So with that, we have a climate focus, and we have our two. Let me introduce our team. So Beth Abels and I are the co-coordinators for the Sustainable Environment Institute. Xiao Bellenhorf, who's a librarian at Valley College, is our third team member, and we'll hear from her today because she's compiled some important information at the Valley College Library that dovetails with one of our topics today, which is how do we deal with climate anxiety, particularly among our students. But our goal is really to advance the teaching of climate ed and to find ways of bringing that into courses where instructors may or may not have access to those resources. So that is why we're very focused on that. I want to introduce Lucy Garcia, who is the co-chair of the Climate Curriculum Committee of the LAUSD. This is the committee that has met for more than 2 years now and has been spearheading the need for the LAUSD to implement climate literacy at all levels in all subjects. And this is an ongoing process. There's a lot of ground has been gained doing that. Including the establishment of climate champions, ideally on every campus of the LAUSD. So I'll let Lucy address that. She's also a member of the Climate Reality Project, and her website, I think we can put that in the chat, will have a lot of information on what that's about. I also want to introduce, when she gets here, maybe, there's Denise Robb has logged in, and she's a professor of political science at Pierce College, and she'll be talking about ways in which she has already implemented climate curriculum into her poli-sci classes. So go ahead, Lucy, and let us know how you manage to juggle all of these things.
I'm retired. What has happened, just because people didn't know in the last session, they didn't know that LAUSD has passed a climate literacy resolution that requires climate education, PK through 12, all subjects. So the idea is, the idea behind that came from our committee, the Climate Curriculum Committee of the Climate Reality Project, Los Angeles. And even though I'm on a chair of a brand new committee, I'm on a committee, I'm not the chair of it. There's a brand new committee of the LAUSD called the Greening Schools and Climate Resiliency Committee of the Board of Education. So I think that's very important. I met last Wednesday for the first time. It was all about electric school buses and so on. So this resolution that they passed, though, establishes, as George said, a position, not very heavily stipended, but there's a position for a lead teacher in every school that would be called a climate literacy champion, who would help other teachers learn how to teach climate change and present some of the resources that you have in your awesome list to them, and then just mentor each other to help each other teach climate, because there's an emotional cost to it, as well as just the time and the energy to put it in there. But it pays back, right? And the reason it pays back is, well, first, let me just say that I taught science in Van Nuys High School for 18 years. And I just always taught climate. I would just take pieces of the curriculum that were mandated and put them aside and teach climate, which is, I got away with it because people were short on science teachers and I'm bilingual. So, but basically what happened, what I noticed was that kids were relieved to talk about it. They were scared, and they were very relieved to talk about it. So that's one of the reasons to put it into your curriculum. The other reason is these kids are facing a completely transformed world, a transformed political situation, you know, maybe even an economically a transformed economic situation. Well, it is. We already know that. They're facing a transformed, you know, basic fundamental physical facts of Earth, right? And so they need lots of practice with all the different talents that they have, all the different disciplines that humanity has come up with to address all the different problems that we have. They are, you know, first of all, they're citizens in a democracy. You know, first of all, they're just kids that need to hear the truth, right? They're fellow human beings that shouldn't be lied to by omission. Secondly, they are citizens of a political democracy. And we need government by the people right now. We don't need censorship of misinformation. We need critical thinking. And thirdly, they are people that are creating culture. We are creating a new culture together, an adjusted culture. Our beliefs are being reframed and changed. And that's why we need all of you to help teach this. May I ask everybody, since there's only a few of us, to say what they teach, so we can focus on that? Would that be all right?
Yeah,
Well-
go ahead, and if you can either shout out loud or put it in your, put it in the chat, if that's all right. Maybe your name and what campus. Is that all right with you, Lucy?
Yeah, that sounds great. I just wanted to say one more thing, and that is, if you know, as a teacher to teacher, the best thing you can do this week to increase climate literacy and alleviate climate anxiety is to support the SEIU and the AUTLA strike. Please do this, because you know that our kids' problems are our working conditions. Right, our students' problems are our working conditions, and the second reason is that we need full staffing. We need a whole lot more money in education to meet this crisis.
Mhm.
So let's support each other. Thank you.
Well, thank you for that comment, Lucy, because I attended that event on Wednesday. It was hugely attended, and glad to see that the Green New Deal for schools was talked about right from the stage, an emphasis on climate literacy, but there's actually sort of 5 points to the Green New Deal for schools that involves changing the campuses, urban gardens, electrification of school buses, etc. So it's quite ambitious, but it's given the $4.6 billion surplus suddenly found at the LAUSD, there can't be real complaints about not being able to meet the financial obligations in making those changes. It was nice to hear this morning when the chancellor opened up the discipline day. He mentioned climate literacy. He mentioned the West LA College Climate Center and also College 101. So what you'll hear from us today dovetails with two of those at least, and that is that the College 101 course, which Lucy knows about, is required of 11th graders in LAUSD. And one of the questions we've had is, how can we create a more seamless transition from what students will be getting in K through 12 and when they enter our campuses as first-year students? Would we start climate education, from kindergarten, or do we pick up in a sense where they've already advanced to? So that's an important aspect of what we need to do in coordinating our education efforts with the K through 12 system. And one of the things that we do is help our students advocate for their own communities. That is something that is central to our agenda today, in the sense that what effect we have on our students and being able to get them to mobilize, activate, cooperate, and find really relief in many ways and inspiration from doing that, rather than the sort of numbing effect of isolation and individualism. So that is of course, we're all educators for a reason, and that is central to that. And I see people are, in fact, thank you very much for including your names and your institution and what it is that you teach. This is going to be very helpful for all of us when we look at how many disciplines might actually be represented here today. So with that, I would like to introduce Denise Robb, who teaches political science at Pierce College. She's also a member of the steering committee of the SEI and has a very interesting, well, let Denise introduce herself and then we can move on to the thicker content.
Oh, okay. Actually, I was going to ask a question first, if that's okay, to Lucy. I just had a quick question about, I'm very excited about this K through or pre-K through 12 curriculum, but I have a colleague who believes climate change is a hoax in my department. And I wondered, what do you have? You must have some teachers that are resistant to this.
At this point, we only have 250 out of the 1,000 schools. It sounds mean to say it that way. There's 250 different schools that have a climate literacy champion, and they're getting training. And yes, there's resistance, but it's mostly we haven't met very much organized resistance, resistance or sort of the disbeliever, the denier resistance so far, but we haven't really talked very much among the climate literacy champions to find out what kinds of barriers they're facing. There has been training on how to talk to the 6 Americas. I don't know if you probably read that, right? The 6 Americas. Okay, I'll try to find an article and drop it in the chat, or if not, I'll tell you later. At any rate, so we don't know that much yet, and we're going to have to do more to find out.
Okay, sorry to have interrupted my own presentation, but I just wanted to know. Anyway, hi everybody. Denise Robb here. I teach political science at Pierce College, and I have embedded some climate stuff into my materials, and I was just going to share my screen, and I'll just show you. I figure that's the easiest way to go. So this is my paper essay assignment for American government, and this is usually the assignment I use. I sometimes change it up with police brutality, but this is part of the regular class. They have one essay that they write, but it's scaffolded in sections. So I divide the class up into 4 political parties. Canvas randomly assigns them the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, the Libertarian Party, and the Green Party. And of course, the Libertarian and Republican Party, they're not very excited about spending money on climate change, but they learn what the different perspectives are from the different parties. And in so doing, they also research climate change. So the most recent assignment was I have them write about the new Inflation Reduction Act, because it's just come into being. And I give them a little summary here of what the parties believe about climate change. And then I have certain headings they must include. They have to choose legislation. I recommend Inflation Reduction Act, but I let them use others. Some of them have chosen some other things like the recent transportation bill, or even some of the very first environmental legislation, pieces of legislation from the 1970s. And then they have to talk about the party's history, the opposition. So obviously, if they're the Republicans, they're going to write about the Democrats and vice versa. And then I have a section on fake versus real news, which I think is important for all classes. They learn how to tell real news from fake news. And our library has created a whole section of resources on what to look for in the URL, how to check if there's other articles similar, and Snopes and PolitiFact and that kind of thing. So I have them write a little section on how they can tell what they're using is a legitimate news source. And then we have a group assignment where they're divided into the different parties, and they have to make a little commercial. It can be a sketch or a video or just a presentation about their party, and they have to focus on all these different areas, and one of them is climate change. And then I give them like an oral exam with no memorizing, no reading. I just want to know, what did you learn over the last 16 weeks about your topic? And then the last thing is I have, let me stop sharing. I show films on climate change. I have the Leonardo DiCaprio film, and After the Flood, and also The Human Element. And then somebody in the chat earlier put in a film they recommended, so I just copied that to see if maybe I want to use that film instead. And they write a summary of what they learned in the films, but then they also have to come up with solutions that they could do, such as not eating meat, or driving an electric car, or a number of things that they might have learned from the film or can even come up with on their own. And also, what can the government do? What kind of policies could we have? Should we have? And we were talking about climate anxiety, and I know we're going to talk about that again, but this is one of the things they were just mentioning in the earlier presentation. One of the things that can alleviate climate anxiety is feeling like you can make a difference, like there's something that you can do, anything you can do, even if it's a small thing. Like I always tell my students, I'm vegan, and I haven't had meat for 48 years. And I always tell my students, even if you just went one day without eating meat, that would make a difference. Even if you're not going to give it up completely, but just limit that. So that's what I've done with my political science 1 class. With my other classes, I have a lot of extra credit opportunities, and some of those include climate change activities. So I allow them to do that. Yeah. Okay. And are there any questions for me?
I think Stephen Coletti has his hand up. Go ahead, Stephen Coletti.
Thank you. Let me say, I did want to comment on your first question that you led up with, was how do you talk to somebody who is a climate change denier?
A teacher, one of the teachers, yeah.
I think the best approach I found, because you can't just load them on with a bunch of information, because they deny everything, right? So you flip it on and says, well, why don't you why do you think that? What's your basis for thinking climate isn't changing? The ice caps are melting. We're having these strange patterns of weather. We have longer and hotter droughts. We have, colder winter events. All these are significant. These are biblical in proportion. What's your evidence that something isn't happening? And make them defend the null hypothesis.
I did, and he told me that he's been watching YouTube videos. And I'm not kidding. This is a colleague, and I said, you realize that YouTube is a platform, not a news source, right?
Mm-hmm.
And he said, I'm just sick of the news anyway, and the climate's always changed, and I can't.
I know, it's just people will pluck out anecdotal. It's like what they did with what Tucker Carlson did with 40,000 hours of January 6th.
Yeah, you just cut the part you want.
And he found slightly less than 4 minutes where nothing was happening.
Right.
Yeah.
But if that's of any use.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for that, Stephen. I think that we always need those kinds of tools, and I think they relate a lot to our anxiety, frankly, as we're facing climate and other catastrophes. And I think that's a really good segue. So thank you for that, because I think it reflects that anxiety about needing to make sure other people know, and that we don't just have denial, but we have understanding, so we can shift to a new place. So, but I'm going to use your fabulous suggestion as a segue to our next part, unless there are other questions for Denise or for Lucy. Right away, Lucy has a question.
And it's not a question, it's I'm sure Denise has done this too, and that is but it's for Stephen to talk about that. If you look up how to talk to climate deniers, there are beautiful resources online, and by people who were doing this throughout the Midwest. And the way to do it, and one of the people is oh, help me here, y'all. The
Bill
Canadian,
Nye, the science guy?
I know. No, she's a evangelical Christian climate scientist.
Yes, yes.
I'll find it and put it in the chat.
Yeah.
Anyway, she has a thing called global weirding.
Mhm.
And the key thing is to connect to values first, because there are values that you share with these people. And once they hear you, telling them back what their values are. So I see this, and then try to, see if you can link it to climate change. Oh, I see that there's this linkage to this, this terrible thing that's happening. And, it's the least useful thing you can do is to challenge them to come up with the data. The most useful thing you can do is to connect with them about the actual values that you hold in common. That's what these people are saying. I don't have a whole lot of
Thank you. And Lucy, if you can put a link to, if you remember, or get a chance to put a link to that, that would be great. And I think it's helpful for all of us. And again, I want to, I think for our next part of this discussion, what we really want to hear is from you all about what your experience is. And right now, we're facing incredible storms, right? We talked about polar ice caps melting, but we're actually, going to be seeing the San Bernardino Mountains melting, or have, like, right in front of us. We have had floods, and well, what we've had here in Los Angeles. Our Pierce's Academic Affairs building was completely flooded out last week. So what I would like to hear from folks is kind of what your experience is right now around, are you experiencing anxiety or fear, or what's kind of happening for you with all of this, the information that's pouring in? So if anybody's willing to share on that, I would really appreciate it. So you can raise your hand, you can put it in the chat, kind of what's going on emotionally for you right now. Yeah, Stephen.
I want to give somebody else a chance to talk, but in our campus in East LA, there's a disconnect. It's not that they are in denial. It's not that my students in the community are in denial. They're not quite sure how it relates to them, or what is it within their power to make any kind of change, and why they would want to do that when they have much more critical problems at hand, problems of just survival and whatnot. So part of the difficulty is not just conveying the information, but say, okay, so what does that mean for this community? What's it mean for you? What's it mean for what your options are going forward? What kind of world are you going to be going into? It's not just about preparing a career, but preparing for your life and what you're going to have to anticipate. And what we can.
So I hear frustration, right? Frustration and a need to help people figure out how to get that information.
That's part of my educational mission. If I'm going to teach them about this, I have to take them outside the classroom and say, look what's happening here.
Yeah, I guess I'm looking for information about emotional, your emotional sense here. Right. So if if you can picture what that is, it sounds to me when you're saying that there is a level of frustration and a bit of, wanting to keep your commitment to the future, and the emotional impact of that would be about, I don't know, it makes me feel really desperate that my students understand the information. I feel some desperation. So.
As it turns out, I was interviewed by someone on our campus newspaper last night. They called and they wanted to have some information about climate change, and they were asking about the Willow project up in Alaska. I said, well, why are you asking about that? He says, I don't know. It just seems to be topical. I says, well, how does that relate to East LA? And so that's sort of how we began the conversation.
Okay, so you're looking for connections with people.
Well, I'm looking for them to have the connection. Up to that point, it was just sort of, she was given this assignment, all right? And she wanted to talk to somebody, what does that mean for climate change? I says, well, the principal question is, how does that deal with us? What impact does that have with us? And then of course it involves climate change. It's, there there are arguments good and bad for that particular project, but from what does that mean for us here in this community?
Okay, so seeking of knowledge or connection to location is one of those things that are really important for you. So I want to hear and see if there's anybody else who has wants to maybe talk about what's going on for them.
Yes.
Yeah, Adrian.
Wanted to hear about how we feel about it.
Yeah. How are you feeling right now about all this?
I mean, in general, when I consider climate change, I feel rage. I feel extremely angry that I connect it to just so many different types of oppression and things that have gone on in history, and the disconnect that we have from all of our indigenous roots and living in harmony with the environment that has come from certain human beings with sociopathic tendencies rising to power and creating systems that are not sustainable and that are harmful. So rage is definitely.
So rage and disconnect. Yeah. All right. Thank you for sharing that. I appreciate it. Anybody else willing to share their feelings right now? I know we have a lot of information. We're all really committed and there's tons of information out there, but I would like to hear just literally what you're feeling right now. Yeah, Beth Chung.
Yeah, so I mean, I think it depends on the moment. So there's all, all the feelings that have been mentioned. I have moments of feeling and, a disillusionment with sort of the human race at times. And then sometimes there's an optimism that we can do something. And sometimes there is sort of this resignation that we're doomed. And so I think, to sum that up, it might be confusion because I'm feeling all kinds of things in any given moment.
Yeah, it's a lot. It's a lot. Thank you for sharing that. Are there other folks who want to share that information, willing to say it out loud?
Well, I think I have something based on the feedback I keep getting from my students also.
Yeah.
The other side that I see as a student myself, how this issue was being delivered, handled in the classroom as compared to now. I mean, like the students, they are learning the science, you give them the opportunity, the debate and everything, but it doesn't seem that way, like kind of only one-sided also. They could be for or against the climate change, but the most important thing is in science, we have to be subjective and then do some scientific stuff, show them data and everything. But the students, they kind of, they're already biased, or even they think they know about climate change, but the way they define it, the way they talk about it is just something else.
So you're hearing, what I'm hearing from what you're saying is some frustration, some disconnect with where students are around, or you're feeling like students are disconnected. And how does that feel for you?
Yeah, well, I really feel frustrated because if you don't know about something properly, you can't even deal with it properly. It's just like you're reading some political papers instead of the actual science. So you're not dealing with the cause and then dealing with the effect properly. So you see what I'm saying?
Totally frustration. So thank you. I appreciate you expressing that. And I think, so what I'm hearing is rage and disconnect and disillusionment, optimism, resignation, confusing, frustration. And I know I feel a lot of like fear and anxiety about this. And I just wanted to check and see if there was anybody else who wanted to say what they were feeling. So this really is not about right now. We're really just talking about what our emotional well-being situation is.
Beth, I want to point out that Xiao Bellenhorf added a link in the chat on the climate anxiety page that she set up at Valley College Library.
Thank you, Xiao, for taking that on. And we have some more resources that we'll keep putting it in here for you. But what I wanted to dig into a little bit was this issue about climate anxiety. And I just want to use it as a frame of reference for why we think climate literacy is so important to add into your curriculum. And there's a number of issues that come up with it, I think, and I know that as a practitioner, as an educator, I frequently feel completely useless as someone who can impact climate change, and especially when I have that climate anxiety, that it feels like I should be out there on the streets or shaking somebody's shoulders and making them believe what I believe. And then I think all I'm doing is teaching architecture. And so I have to look for ways to deal with climate anxiety around these things. And one of the things we know now, and thank you for putting those climate anxiety resource guide information up there, is that one of the best ways to combat that emotional state, which, all of these are sort of anxiety traits, right? Rage and disillusionment and confusion and frustration. And so one thing we know is that we can combat climate anxiety with action. And to quote Lucy, I want to remind us when I say action that I mean thoughtful, reflective action, not just like going out there and doing something, but how we actually can really impact our climate and climate chaos and biodiversity and soil health and water health and the health of our communities is by embedding climate literacy into our curriculum, because we are taking action, and a very important action to kind of help us alleviate. And maybe this is a little bit of an individualistic way to look at it, but by taking that action, by adding climate literacy into our curriculum, we are taking action, and very important action, because we are educating so many and providing options and action pathway for our students who are going to be the people who frame and are framing what happens in our future and around climate. And so I think what I'm trying to do here is make a pretty big argument for why it is so important to add climate literacy into your curriculum, and how important it is for you as an educator who may or may not feel like you're steps away from where the real action is happening in climate advocacy, when in fact you are in the center. And I'm going to steal Lucy's quote about kind of working within the system that you are in. This is your environment. You're an expert at it, and to be able to work within the systems that we have expertise is addressing, can make a really huge difference in what happens with our climate. And so I kind of want to use that as a lead in to make the argument for you all to please use our resources and start to think about how you can help your own sense of well-being and help our students' sense of well-being, as well as our communities and our planet's well-being, by embedding climate literacy in college curriculum. So.
Well, that segues to our resources section, right, Beth?
Yeah, yes, it is. Thank you, George.
Well, because, Beth and all three of us worked on a document which will be in the chat there that you can access. And I'll just show you what it looks like. Where is my, there we go. Share. The climate literacy resources, and they're well organized by curriculum resources. And then our very own website that has information, articles, and databases. And so this is available to you to help you find materials that you can include, particularly those of you who are outside of the STEM silos, as it were, that want to get information that you want to include in your courses, and that you're not particularly, a major in environmental science or environmental studies. So this is why this exists here. This is really to help you find those materials. We'll be, of course, updating it from time to time, but it's grown quite a bit since yesterday, I can tell you. Thanks to Lucy, thanks to Denise, we've been able to add some sources there. And in connection with that, I want to direct you to the SEI's own website, where let's see if it's sharing. I think you can see this. the SEI LACCD, which is this website, is really there for faculty to help you with environmental education. So we have our most recent seminar, and we also have on our front page Xiao Bellenhorf's connection to the climate anxiety pages that she set up at Valley College. In addition to that, we have ample teaching resources. Most of them are really focused on climate. These are from everywhere in the world, and it includes animations. If you scroll down, you'll see that we have film and animation, things that will help you with geographic information, with graphics. So this is a very valuable teaching resource page, and it also takes you to our seminar series that we've had now for over 2 years. And I'm glad to say that both Denise and Lucy Garcia have participated in these seminars in our recent past, and even as far back as Earth Day last year. And that's how we were able to take on topics that were new to us, for example, climate anxiety in younger people. In addition to that, we have articles, and these are curated carefully so that we basically provide you a shortcut. In a way, it's an archive more than it is an up-to-the-date news service. It gets updated once in a while. And of course, we do have a page of events, and this is where faculty can find out either to direct their students to extra credit. All of these are generally, they're local, and in very rare occasion is this something that's actually being hosted nationally online, but they tend to be local and quite useful. So that is our LACCD, SEI LACCD net teaching resources and articles, and then you can scroll down and see that there's the several pages that Xiao set up at LAVC Library. And so I'll stop the share on that one and go ahead, continue, Xiao or Beth, with resources available to faculty. 2 new messages.
Xiao, can you share your resource guide? Thanks.
Yep, I will. Just give me 1 second. Okay, hopefully you can all see the climate anxiety guide. Is a resource guide. So we as SEI, our mission is to bring climate and sustainability awareness to the campus community, so not just faculty, but everyone involved. But one of our, I guess, our focus right now is on faculty, to help faculty to organize faculty to make adopting climate literacy into your curriculum easier. And so we want to provide resources that you can easily access and link from your own classes. So there was a lot of discussion, I think, a few months ago on climate anxiety is ongoing, but it was sort of reached a point that we decided to have a climate anxiety workshop. And to support the workshop, I put together this climate anxiety resource. So from here, I hear even today, we have a lot of frustration, a lot of confusion, and a lot of, just not knowing what to do or feel like what we do is not enough to combat or to mitigate the impact of climate change in our communities. So here is just a resource guide on how to, I guess, make ourselves feel better, or how to help us and our students to feel to take care of ourselves, not to be overwhelmed by the anxiety that we're feeling about the environment. So we have readings on climate anxiety, articles and books, and curriculum resources for self-care and emotional resilience. And I want to point out this one link called All We Can Save Project. So here you have a lot of resources that you can start a discussion on the climate. They can be is multidiscipline approach. So you don't have to teach science to easily adopt the climate conversation into your classroom. And there are assignments. There are assignments to spark action. So we all know one thing make us feel better is we know that we can do something about the climate environment and to make change around us. So these are things that you can easily access, and you can choose which one you want to bring to your own classroom. There are also, if you want to have your students listen to a podcast and also a videos, so we have it in here as well. In addition to the climate anxiety guides, we also have a climate action guide. So here we have a list of actions, a group of what you can take, and also organizations we put together that you could get involved in if you or your students, would like to continue the discussion beyond the classroom that you have. And also I hear Adrian, talking about like an anger or rage. So, I'm sure you all know a climate climate change is really environmental justice, and is environmental racism is not just about the environment, is about how is unfairly affecting our most at-risk communities, our indigenous, our Black and brown communities. So is talking about climate change is sort of, you cannot take that away or out of a climate justice realm of talking about it, because I think when I came Stephen, and was Stephen talking about like not really making the connection, like the students are not quite making the connection. And I think this, talking about from the lens of environmental justice might be a way to make connections, because our students probably live in the communities that had poor air quality, has landfill, has oil refinery, and they have higher death rate for COVID infections and death. So this may be a way for us to make a more impactful connection about environment and their lives. So the links are there. If you have any questions, please let me know. And if you want any resources, I'm sure you can connect with your college librarians, and they'll be able to purchase the resource, make the film available for your class, or anything you want, talk to them. So thank you so much. And I think now I want to link this with, like we are all here together talking about it, how we can embed climate education into our classrooms and how to use the resources. But we also, as SEI, we're also organizing or hoping to get together a group of like-minded faculty to have a community of practice on climate literacy. So Beth, take it away.
Thanks very much for that, Zhao. And I want to add that Zhao is one thing that didn't really come up in so much in this discussion, but came up in the Chancellor's discussion this morning, is that we have a College 101 class that it looks like will eventually be tied to LA Unified. And as Lucy Garcia mentioned, climate literacy is required to be in pre-K through 12th grade now as in LA Unified. And so we're looking at that College 101 class as a way to get 11th graders some more climate literacy and get them prepped for coming into college. And so we've spoken with several of the faculty who are teaching College 101 and also curriculum chairs about embedding climate literacy into the College 101 class, which would bring it to the 11th graders, as well as our students here who are taking that College 101. But the reason I brought that up is Zhao actually has just finished a draft of a module for Canvas that might pop into those classes easily. So we're happy to share that when we're approved for it, when it's done. But we have these tremendous number of resources. You saw the resource page, and we could spend hours taking you through that. We don't want to do that. You can do that on your own. But there are fabulous resources in there, and fabulous resources on the LA Valley College library guides that Zhao's built. And the problem is, I think, is putting all this information into practice. And it is not easy, as we all know, as educators, to try to embed everything we want to get into a class, let alone add climate literacy into it. And SEI is looking for funding sources to provide stipends. And we have other ways. We're looking at it. It's going to take us time, but in the meantime, we're kind of everybody's putting climate literacy into their curriculum on their own and out of the goodness of their heart. And it's hard work. And I get that. We get it at SEI. So that's why Zhao is talking about resources. But also we want to establish a community of practice so that you have an opportunity to try things, hear what other people are doing, get some time to reflect on whether something's working or it's not working, find out how other faculty are strategizing on embedding climate literacy, and kind of have a place, kind of a sounding board over time to really start to integrate that. And we know climate literacy is embedded in most of many STEM classes, but it's not so easy, I think, and so direct thinking for us to figure out how to do that in our own non-STEM field. So not only do we have resources, but we are building community of practice. So you have a place to come and explore those ideas with us. If you're interested in that, if that's something that speaks to you, please, by all means, put your name in the chat or email us. And Zhao, if you wouldn't mind putting the SEI email in there, let us know you're interested. There'll be lots of announcements coming out, but we've been working with 3CSN to establish kind of a framework for what that community of practice might look like, and hope to get it going pretty soon, so that we can really get started on the hard work of putting this materials into our classes. So I wanted to check and see if there's any questions, any thoughts, reflections for myself, Denise, Lucy, for George.
Lucy has been putting some really good links in the chat. I've just been clicking on them, and there it's quite a little gold mine in the chat going on there.
Yeah, thank you, Lucy. It reminds me that one of those things that might happen out of a community of practice is a book club, or an opportunity to discuss what we're reading, right? Or to found a community of practice on maybe somebody's practice, right? Maybe you establish a community of practice on Marie Heglar, and start to talk about that as a group and build community around that. So those are all potential possibilities. So
one of the tabs on our website is actually called Films and Books. We do welcome any recommendations. It's not an exhaustive list by any means. And we especially would appreciate any one paragraph or less review that you might offer in recommending a book, because most of them are really about dealing with the climate crisis. The films are more generally environmental, but that's one of the tabs on SEI, LACCD, over here.
Speaking of which, is anybody here who is have a climate literate course where they're adding climate literacy into it, that you want to bring that up and toot your own horn here? All right, so it sounds like we need help big time.
Your own part. That's Chinese recommending a bookie book. Oh,
yeah, Monique.
Sorry, I'm on my phone. It took me a minute to find the raise hand. I teach ESL, and most of my students are immigrants, so I do have to do some other cultural content, but most of my content is about the environment, just because, we do a lot of reading, and why not? So the students always like it. I always have positive responses, and I don't know if any minds are getting changed or whatever, but it's, putting it out there. And I am going to look at your links that you sent out too, and see if there's some new content that I can use.
Thank you for sharing that. Adrian, you have your hand up.
Yeah, I was thinking about two things, inside and outside the classroom. So in my class, I already have some assignments. I teach a college and career planning. I already have some assignments about career planning during uncertain times, or when things happen that are outside of your control, that change and impact your career journey. And I give students a lot of options in terms of which questions they want to address. So I can adjust that assignment and put some more specificity in there about climate. And so that's my one thought and takeaway from this session. So thank you very much. But the other thing I'm left thinking about is this climate anxiety issue and how that might be impacting our enrollment. And that if students think I've seen so many different things throughout my life. And I mean, I'm grown, but come on. I've seen so many times where people thought like the world is ending, right? But I think we're hitting up, and I've seen billboards and things. This is the date that's going to happen, right? But I do think that there's actually starting to be a bigger sort of, hopelessness. And so if someone's feeling hopeless generally about the world, why would they want to start an educational journey? So I'm just sort of grappling with that concept and thinking about how that might impact how we talk to students and student services, but also other things that can be into my curriculum. So that's just kind of a bigger thought that I'm left with.
Thank you.
Yeah, and thank you for that. Thank you for that. I think that hopelessness is contagious too, right? And
Lucy.
Yeah, just on that exact question is, if you look at the history of the human race, now everything's speeded up now, but if you look at the history of the human race, we invented writing, and now 87% or 85.7%, I forgot what it is, of the whole world reads. We invented vaccinations, and we've wiped out a whole bunch of things. Women solved this whole population bomb thing. We in countries all over the world, they just went neighbor to neighbor, and they started talking about family planning, and they got together with their ministers of health, and they got it done. Now I think it's 2.3 is the fertility of a couple, average fertility of a couple across the world. We can do things, and we do things. We are not greedy idiots. So the more you learn, where you're so completely, utterly at the center of what's coming up next. We're the people who are training the next generation, and we have to listen and work with them, partner with them in these fast moving times to figure out what directions that we need to revise our basic beliefs to fit the fast changing facts. Every discipline that there is in that we've come up with is useful and will be needed. I thought about this many years ago. I was thinking, oh my God, if we have to move to the polls, what part of education would I throw out? And I couldn't find one. I cannot find one part of education that I would find out if our whole society had to move to the polls. So keep at it, my dears.
Oh, thank you, Lucy. That's why Lucy's so inspiring, because you remind us sort of the big picture. And that's, it's too easy to get lost in the weeds, particularly if we're teaching material and we're struggling with content. And we do need that step away and big picture, remind ourselves what we're doing. Stephen Coletti has a hand up as we bring today to a close. Go ahead, Stephen.
Oh, I don't want to, I was kind of sitting back. I did want to make a couple comments. First off, we actually at East LA, we have a course on global climate change. We're one of the few that teach that in the district. And so part of our problem is that getting people to take the course, but also now when we talk about climate change, to get, not to overwhelm people with all the information. But I think that it's important that one of the things that I talked earlier about, our community, there's a disconnect between most of the students we serve, as idealistic as they'd like to be, but it's just not a direct connection. It doesn't have the immediacy of the things that impact their daily lives. And that's what we need to convince them of. We have to show them what the connection is between a changing climate and what that means for them and their families and their neighborhood. But we also have to show them that it's possible that it's possible for them to be part of the solution. And one thing I tell my students, I says, really, if we took the whole world and reduced it to a village of 100 students or 100 people, only 1 or 2 would have a college education, and they would probably be Americans. You are among the educated elite. You may not feel that here at East LA, but you are among the educated elite that the world is going to look to resolve these issues that we're dealing with today. And you need to get started right away because it's a tough climb.
Oh, indeed. Well, it looks like we're out of time, but Beth, do you want to provide, I see you put in the chat, thank you everybody for joining us today. And this is recorded, so it's retrievable, and we will share that with you when it's available. Thank you.
It'll be on SEI's website, which is on the, I'll put the document back in case you didn't grab it. And sorry, George, didn't mean to interrupt you there.
No, that we're just winding up. Go ahead.
So we just wanted to thank everybody and keep your ears and eyes open for more information from us and our Earth Day events coming up, and community practice coming up, and our newsletter, which will come out hopefully sometime in before break. Thanks all very much.
Thank you.
Thank you, Lucy, and thank you, Denise.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you.
Thank you for a great panel.
Stephen, give me a call. I have some ideas that might help.